everybody. What's up? Turn that guy down there. Hey, what's going on? Welcome back Outside the Cinema.
Yep.
Another week, another pre-recorded show, another whole what can we do for this show? Right. That's really pretty much, I think. So inadvertently, we're 3 weeks into the pre-recorded shows, and we inadvertently kind of took this deep dive into analog horror that, I don't think was really necessarily intended. I think it was just the type of thing where you were like, oh, you know what we could do for one of the shows is we could do an analog horror show, because I've been watching a lot of that. I'm like, yeah, that sounds great.
Why not?
So that's kind of what we've done, but now we've inadvertently now covered a bunch of analog horror movies in the last couple of months, and but we haven't. And the thing is, I guess if you're gonna be the granddaddy of them all, Blair Witch is kind of the starting point. It's not the first, obviously, but it's kind of the starting point for modern horror of analog horror, right?
It changed. Well, it created a genre that had been experimented with. Honestly, I would say that the stuff we've watched, Without Warning, Special Broadcast, Phase 4 was another one. Something 3, Alternative 3 was another one. All of those, they played with the idea of it, and it worked. But Blair Witch worked because of the marketing, and people bought into it. And so what my point is, while we know other things Cannibal Holocaust technically was the first found. No, it had the first found footage in a movie. There's a difference.
Right.
This and the time it was made when video cameras were less expensive to own. Everybody's
much more of a consumer product at this point.
I'm sure even you said, I have woods behind my house. I have a camera.
Well,
I have 3 people that can scream really loud. And then you just go from there. And what happens is you get a whole bunch of awful crap, and you get for every 12 bad movies, you get one good one, which is fine because professional movie makers aren't making all of these. And then it refines, and you get other parts of it where it's okay, these work. This is the trope of the genre. And then All in the Family, stuff starts branching off, doing other stuff. And that's I will shit on individual found footage movies, but as a genre, I don't think you can say all of them are awful.
No, far from it. And we've seen a lot of really good examples of good ones.
You can say I can't watch the filming style at all. That just makes me sick to my stomach. I get it. That's fine. Go ahead, son.
So just kind of rewinding it back, I like the point that you brought up of when people Blair Witch is the first real found footage horror movie, and then you make that distinction. A lot of everyone, film nerds like myself, will be oh, well, no, it's Cannibal Holocaust. But you make a really good point with the distinction of Cannibal Holocaust features a sequence of found footage, but is not presented front to back as a found footage film.
But I would give that as the inspiration for it, because all it takes is, Q, the winged serpent, was the director looking up going, I wonder what would happen if a giant bird attacked. And then that was the movie. Just one thought. So watching Cannibal Holocaust would be, well, what if the movie was all that footage? And that's it. You just go from there. That's it. A simple idea. And you create a whole new genre. Just let's turn our guitars up so loud it distorts the sound.
Well, no, it was the Kinks that started the distortion, right?
So.
He would, was it Ray Davies? Was the guitar player for the Kinks? He would cut the speaker.
Oh,
he would slice the speaker cone, and that's where the distortion came from.
Yeah. There's examples of it earlier than that here and there, but not as a sustained tone through the whole song.
Right, for sure. All right, so let's kind of just rewind a little bit. This show is a Blair Witch show. We're going to talk about all kinds of Blair Witch stuff, not just the movies, but we're going to bring in some of the books, the comics, the video game, because back in 1999, when the Blair Witch Project was originally released, it was presented and marketed as if it was a real film.
Yep.
They were the first ones to really build a universe, a website, a mythos, a legend, if you will, about the Blair Witch. It became urban legend or whatever, however you want to look at it. But they took what Ricardo Deodato did with Cannibal Holocaust and like hiding the actors and actresses after the thing to really present this as if it was a real project.
Yeah. I told my kids while we were watching all of these that Blair Witch is sort of like the original. I know it's not, but it's one of the more well-known ARGs that are out there, the alternate reality games that like the Cicada 3300 or whatever it is.
Yeah, on a much lower scale.
Oh,
but
but
you're right.
it popularized the idea of using the internet for that. So they were the first. So good for them.
Yeah, so it was presented as a documentary, and they're like, here's the website with the history, and you'd go into the Heather, Michael, and Joshua characters. And if you were paying enough attention, you knew that it was marketing. Like,
well, I mean, if you were an adult at the time, I'm not making fun of kids, but like, because I would want to believe it if I was younger. But all of us would be like, I haven't seen anything about this on the news.
Right, exactly. But then you think about it though, like, people go missing all the time, and you don't hear about it on the news every night. But here's one of the promotional trailers for the original Blair Witch Project. So take a listen to this. So that preview basically just gives you a couple of taglines of, scariest movie since The Exorcist from this person, genuinely frightening from this person, couple of screams, and they give you the in 1994, 3 filmmakers went into the woods. 6 years later, their footage was found.
That's a good trailer. I like that.
And then the BlairWitch.com is all you get.
Right, that's right.
And at the time, 1999, obviously the internet wasn't new, but like to your everyday consumer and everyday person, the internet was not everybody had the internet in 1999. Now everybody has
access
the internet.
was limited back then. Yeah.
Right. So they definitely, understood. Eduardo Sanchez and Daniel Myrick, the original makers of the original Blair Witch Project, understood this and were able to get ahead of the game and really kind of push an envelope that hadn't been pushed before. And it worked in a way that the fever before the film released of like wanting to see this movie, and like I know myself, 1999, I was what was I, 21, 22, and I was enthralled by it.
Yeah.
Absolutely enthralled by it, and was like, well, went to see it at opening night. Place was sold out. They had it playing on a couple of different screens. It's, I don't know if it still is, but at the time it was the biggest, most profitable horror movie of all time.
Yeah, because it cost like $80,000 to make, and it made almost $300 million.
I think it was even less than that. I think the original production budget was something like $15,000, and like when you factor in like all the money that Artisan and everyone put into it, then it was a bigger number. But like, I mean, it was the biggest payoff for a film of all time. So, there was this funny thing with this movie after it came out and a lot of people saw it. A lot of people hated it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because of the style and because you don't see anything.
Okay. So Blair Witch right now is number 10. It had a budget of $60,000 and it made, why doesn't it say here? But I know in the 90s, ticket prices were only like $7 or $8, and it made like 248 million worldwide. And then Get Out had a $4.5 million budget. So this is like how much it made over percentage-wise with its budget. Paranormal Activity was $15,000. It made,
and Paranormal Activity just took the Blair Witch model and just reused it.
Oh yeah, but effectively, and they reworked it and did their own thing. All right, so Saw, Halloween was $325,000. It's $1 billion franchise. Barely.
Yeah.
Open Water, I mean, $120,000 for scuba gear, I guess. Terrifier was $35,000. Evil Dead was $375,000. Talk to Me. This is number 2. Talk to Me 4.5. And Psycho with a budget of $800,000.
Interesting.
Made $50 million worldwide. So, of films, recent films at the time, Halloween, the first Halloween probably would beat it, but I don't know if that's adjusted for inflation because there's a whole lot here I'm not reading.
Right.
So, but no, it's
That's
being in the top 10 is amazing, absolutely amazing
for this little film.
Yeah,
it's crazy. But there was a backlash on it, and like people were like they were getting sick in the theater because they couldn't handle the shaky cam, and you know, we don't ever see the witch, we don't ever know what happens. It's left so ambiguous. But I mean, for me, that was like kind of the brilliance in this movie because you hadn't seen that. We were coming off of 80s slashers and 90s,
That's
pretty
right.
people horror, and like everything was force fed to you. You saw every monster, you saw every killer.
Oh, and it was in glorious 90s CG.
Yeah, you saw Jason's face.
Yeah.
You saw all of these things.
This is like
Blair Witch didn't show you anything.
No, so it's like Blair Witch was grunge coming in to kill off hair metal in a way.
And it's that's actually a really good comparison because
More than one way now that I'm
know.
thinking about it.
No, seriously. So it was, there was kind of some kickback on it, but there was something about this movie. And I know I've told this story on the show before, but I remember going and seeing an open night with a bunch of my friends. And I was still living with my parents at the time, so I was still in college. So I came home, and I remember, like, I live on the edge of the state forest in Massachusetts, and I remember it being kind of a windy night, and I remember looking out, coming up my porch and looking out into the forest, and the wind and the trees are blowing, and it got under my skin, man.
Yeah.
And it got under my skin, and I got scared, like legitimately scared, and like kind of like rushed into the house and was like, oh, I don't know. That was kind of weird.
Your imagination can really mess with you, especially if it's effective and it's something new you've never seen before.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, I think the original Blair Witch, I love the original Blair Witch, and like we're not necessarily going to have to go in and like do a full review here, but I loved it. I love the way it was presented. I love the way that they shot it. I love that like they gave you just these little little strings to pull, and because they built this universe, and you would go to the website and you would do more research. Yep. How did you feel about it when you first saw it? Because were you working at the theater at the time? You were, right?
99, I was in New Hampshire until November.
Okay.
And then back here, and then saw you were working at Sam Goody. So that was probably November of that year.
Okay.
So what was I doing, right? I don't remember what job I had right before that. It might have been the sewer company.
What did you have between Blockbuster and Sam Goody?
Video update.
Because that's
what it was. Video
So
update.
it's probably around that time, right?
Yeah. But I forget what I was doing right at the end there. Anyway, I remember being like, that's supposed to be scary because I didn't see it in the theater.
Right.
I was a very angry person back in the 90s, and I didn't go for anything people wanted. And I thought that the ending with the corner was really effective, and that stayed with me. But the rest of it, all I remember is like everybody being a dick to each other, and I'm like, this isn't fun. And this is only, I think, the second or third time I've watched it now.
Okay.
And it really is like a rough draft, like a proof of concept kind of thing now, having seen all these other ones. But I like that there is no monster, quote unquote, in the woods, but there isn't. If you're filming, the thing knows how to stay off camera, you're not going to see it. And that's good. This is also the start of the ambiguous horror endings too, which really people didn't go for. It's not in my top 10 of found footage, but I like it, and I'm glad it was made.
Fair enough.
Maybe in my top 10.
Right.
Second half, though.
So The thing with Blair Witch, though, as we said earlier, is what made it so profound and is the universe that they built around it, and the marketing that they used around it, and they were brilliant because they still, even though they now at this point were like, we know it's not real. We know Heather Donahue is an actress, and Michael C. Williams and Joshua Leonard and these guys, like they use their real names in the film, but like they're real people. So, they made, the Curse of the Blair Witch, which a lot of people call back to, and if we're going to talk about, analog horror. The Sci-Fi Channel it wasn't a Sci-Fi Channel original because it was made by Artisan.
Right, Artisan, yeah.
They showed it on Sci-Fi and Discovery.
Yeah, it was exclusive to their
networks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were able to get our hands on a copy of Curse of the Blair Witch that was the original broadcast of it with the commercials in it. God bless that 1999 Sci-Fi Channel. Because it's the Sci-Fi Channel is obviously not. It's just Sci-Fi now. But like back then, it was just this different beast. But and this was we got Without Warning really easy. That was up on YouTube.
Yeah.
We got
the other one, Special Bulletin, was there too.
Special Bulletin. We found those. So I had to dig to find this, and I found on archive.org the original broadcast of it, and the audio on it was horrendous.
Huh. Like
So,
how bad? Like ruined videotape bad?
Do I have it? Can I play it for you? I don't think I have it here. It was like bad. There was like a bump every like few seconds where the person would be talking and you hear like
oh, okay. Yeah. I had a radio play that had this constant tick through the whole thing. Like they left the metronome on or something. But yeah, and then that's all you're focused on the whole time. I get it.
Yeah. So I've gotten decent at audio stuff, so I downloaded it and was able to bring it into my software and clean up the audio. And we'll actually probably post this version of it up on the Dropbox archives for everyone because it's not out there, and I feel like it should be. So
the audio was good. You did a good job with that, not knowing.
Yeah, and it wasn't really that difficult to clean up. It was just a matter of finding the frequency where the thing was, and then getting the right tool to remove it. But so Curse of the Blair Witch is often talked about as, one of those really like special marketing type things because it is presented exactly the way you would watch one of those documentaries on Discovery Channel or Sci-Fi Channel about like horror legends and stuff and like disappearances. Like it's presented exactly like you would see on one of those channels.
Yeah.
So even though at this point that it's not real, this presentation of it is so like spot on that like you're like, wow, like there's like a really deep story here.
Yeah. There's
a history that you don't really get in the movie.
No, you hear it, but it's not really. It's not a big thing, but it is. But it isn't. It's people. You're talking about Rustin Parr, basically, and how the witch was originally
Ellie Kedward.
Yeah, like taken care of. Because I've noticed in part 2 and the it's a sequel. It's definitely a sequel. Blair Witch. They talk about Rustin Parr a lot, and I had forgotten all about him.
Yeah,
but he's a huge part of the story. I don't know what parts.
Well, yeah,
you were.
Yeah.
Go ahead. This is your thing.
No, I was just gonna say no. Like so, like there's this whole mythos that's given in Curse of the Blair Witch that like is barely touched on, some of which isn't even mentioned in the film. So you start with the legend of Ellie Kedward, the witch that was taken out to the woods, and then the children disappeared and the children died, and then you hear the fable of the Blair Witch cult, which is a book that apparently there was only one copy of made, and they have the guy runs the historical society or whatever it is, and he's like, yeah, they came and they took the book and they took all the stuff, and then there's the Russ thing, but there's all these other little stories of just people just like disappearing in the woods and stuff. So it's like this real, and it's always blamed on the Blair Witch, but like there's no like there, you see that one drawing of the Blair Witch that they show multiple times, but like there's no like real definitive proof of anything, but it's all presented in this way of like these are real legends that are just told in the woods of Maryland.
Yeah, just like
and
any other.
It's done really well.
Yeah, Yeah, it's a believable location. They got the Coffin Rock, like that's perfectly named. It's in a great spot. The burnt out house, everything really came together really well.
Yeah, the Coffin Rock part of the story is great because they, tell the story of this little girl who was drowned in the or no, not the drown. This little girl that disappears, and they send out a search party to find her, and then she returns to town, and then they send out another search party to find the search party, and then that search party supposedly finds all of the members of the first search party murdered and like strewn across this rock.
Yeah, 5 of them, right? That's the
Five or six of them, something like that. Yeah. Okay. But it's like all these different stories, and like the whole thing comes back to that like every 50 years or so, there's some sort of Blair Witch thing that happens.
Yeah.
So they do it. They fill in all of the holes. So if you watch the movie, and then you're like, oh, like well, it doesn't, there's no nothing. But then you watch Curse of the Blair Witch, it fills in all those holes, and you can go back and watch the movie and get a much better understanding of like the effigies, like the like the symbols that you see and the sounds in the woods, and like how like despite the fact that they're walking the same direction, they end up in the same place they started.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that are opened up more as the kind of the Blair Witch canon kind of moves on. But as far as the original stuff, it's you can take it as just the Blair Witch Project and Curse of the Blair Witch and just take it as that.
Yeah.
Because as the studios are known to do, you have a property that makes a ton of money and people have a lot of interest in it. We're going to make a sequel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, with or without you is usually what it says, right?
Yeah, and for the most part, Book of Shadows, the sequel that came only like a year and a half after the release of the original one, it was, I think Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez get like character credits, but I don't think they really had much of anything to do. I don't even know if they were executive producers on it. They
were. Eduardo was. I remember seeing his name. Okay. I read something about the script that they filmed wasn't what was written, and it was cut up. It was supposed to be psychological horror and tap into mass hysteria and that kind of thing. And you can see the bones of that story in Book of Shadows, but it's just overwhelmed with this betrayal imposter storyline that really felt forced.
Yeah, the biggest issue with Book of Shadows, so Joe Berlinger produced and directed it. He's probably best known as he worked on Paradise Lost. Okay, that famous documentary, and the Metallica, some kind of monster documentary.
Oh yeah, that's
also.
right. That's right.
So Joe Berlinger he knows what he's doing, and on the surface, you think of him as being this great documentary filmmaker, and you're like, oh, okay, a Blair Witch sequel by this guy is going to work.
Yeah, it's going to be like nailed down perfect. Yeah.
But the problem is that everything that made the original Blair Witch Project successful is essentially kind of taken away from this sequel.
Yeah.
Now, and in theory, I understand not making the sequel be a found footage film. But at the same time, you're like, that's the bread and butter that made the original one stand out.
Yeah.
So the idea of Book of Shadows is you have a group of tourists that they go into the woods. They're all people that are obsessed with the film. The film, The Blair Witch Project, is a real film in this world, but is also a real true story in this world.
Yeah, it's
also.
like if you did it's like Werner Herzog's Loch Ness Monster movie.
Yeah, so you got your main character Jeffrey Donovan, who plays Jeff. He's taking this group into the woods on the Blair Witch tour or whatever, and they get into into over their head. They get in over their head. But the problem is that like it is presented as the straight narrative story. They do work in some video camera stuff and like, but it's just so horribly boring and like, but not like it's not boring. That things happen in it. So I don't know. I personally really truly dislike it. I tried to rewatch it for this conversation and only got maybe 35, 40 minutes into it.
Yeah, there are some parts that I just don't see that they resolved. Like, they come across Rustin Parr's house and they're going to camp there for the night. There's a big tree in the middle that looks like it's 200 years old. And then later on in the videotape, like it's just a sapling. So like there's time being manipulated here. But I don't remember that having an answer or being resolved or any of that. It was just weird. Like, why bring that huge point up that, oh, there's time slips happening here? Yeah, we'll just deal with it.
Yeah, and that's the first inkling and showing we have of these different time loops and stuff is in this movie, because they come across another group of campers, and then like those campers end up getting murdered. And
Five
then, like,
of them, by the way.
5 of them, yeah. So they do. I mean, they work within the world that's kind of been created, but they take so many liberties and try to create more that doesn't really need to be created.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work.
Yeah. I think
and this is universally, like, if you look at lists of like worst sequels,
yeah,
like this shows up on a large number of them, and I
does.
completely understand why.
It does. I remember watching this for the first time, and there's a lot of hidden stuff in there that I remember seeing, like the carpet that the girl's trying to do the spells on. At one point says murder or betrayal, or I forget what it says, but like it's written out with the texture of the carpet. There's little hints in the background and stuff, because the whole movie basically plays with what's reality and what isn't, which I really like that in a movie, but this didn't. I don't know. It just didn't. They didn't seem worried enough, I guess is what it comes down to. None of them were scared enough to do anything about it. They went back to this dude's house, who's their fucking tour guide, and hung out. Why did they hang out at his house?
It's a great
Why
question.
didn't they go home? What the hell?
So to give everybody else a little bit more of like, so Joe Berlinger, the director, his version of this film was very different, and he's been known to say, and he even said it on the commentary on the DVD, that he didn't like the changes that were made because. Here, I'll just read that.
Yeah.
Unhappy with Joe Berlinger's version of the film, Artisan opted to reshoot certain sequences to add a more traditional horror movie element and recut the movie to make it more commercial. Berlinger repeatedly states on the DVD commentary that he does not like the changes that were made and that they ruin the ambiguous tone of the film. It's so evident. Like, it's so evident when you watch it.
So I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that it's all of the intercuts of the murders happening throughout the whole movie. When like they have that flash and it's like the knife going into the sweater kind of thing. Because that felt like old slasher stuff.
Right.
And if it was left ambiguous, did these people kill them? That I think that would have been a more enjoyable mystery.
Agreed. So to kind of just go on here with the, like, again, studios just can't keep their hands off of properties that like they feel they know better. So the idea that the original Blair Witch Project was a monstrous financial success, and also, critically and with fans, just a massive success. They felt as though they needed to change everything with the sequel, including this one here. Film originally opened to Frank Sinatra's song Witchtrap to give off a lighter atmosphere before the plot unfolded by Artisan Entertainment forced Joe Berlinger to instead include Marilyn Manson's Disposable Teens for the opening scene for a more punk rock feel.
That's not punk.
And it feels so out of place when you watch it.
It feels like Power Man's going to show up and do a set at the rec center, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's these really nice overhead shots that weren't done with drones because we didn't have them back then. But it's like, it's the woods, isn't it? And you go over the water, and it's all, this movie is brown. The whole movie is orange and brown. It's very 70s color aesthetic. But it didn't fit. I mean, it sets the tone. The music definitely sets a tone for the movie, but no. I will say, though, the Donahue, the lead guy here, he has one of the better intense stares that I've seen, and that was probably the best. His acting was the best in the whole movie. Like when he's sitting there crying and he's just not blinking, and he's got the 1,000-yard stare. It's not always easy to do. I thought he looked believably spooked.
Artisan Entertainment, who distributed the original movie, was keen to produce a sequel quickly to take advantage of its predecessor's popularity. However, Haxan Films, the producer of the first film, which included original directors Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, weren't comfortable working on a sequel so quickly and preferred to wait until the hype had diminished a bit. Artisan, who had the rights, then decided to produce the sequel without Haxan Films. Myrick and Sanchez were given executive producer credits, but both men later stated they had very little creative input and disliked the final film. The final film. So it goes to show right there, the studio didn't include the original guys because they couldn't wait, and then couldn't keep their hands off it, even though the director had an idea of what he wanted to do, and it just really and the general public knew these things and rejected the film. In another just really stupid move, they then tried to kind of retcon to what the original film did and the legend around it and the website and all of the great marketing they did, and produced another sci-fi documentary called The Shadow of the Blair Witch, which then intended to tell all of us that Blair Witch Book of Shadows was actually based on a real set of murders by a guy named Jeff that took place. And they present it in the same way they did with Curse of the Blair Witch, that it was like, hey, yeah, they're making this movie, but this is what really happened.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
So the lore for Blair Witch 2 involves someone named Jeff the Killer?
Yeah, I guess so.
Huh. I wonder if that's where the name came from for the creepypasta dude.
I highly doubt it.
Also, I don't understand, and I never have, why the fuck business-minded people are making artistic fucking decisions. It's the dumbest fucking thing.
Yep.
Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, that just pisses me off.
So no, and to double on that point, they realized that they fucked up, and they realized that they had taken away everything that made people love the original film, and then tried to retcon in after the fact, and it just doesn't work. So we just talked about Curse of the Blair Witch and how good Curse of the Blair Witch is. I think it's really well done. That original broadcast, really ridiculous sci-fi commercials from the network, a lot of different Pontiac commercials and stuff.
Oh,
I wasn't able to get my hands on an original broadcast of Shadow of the Blair Witch, but it is easily available to watch in its entirety on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
But it's just like the film. It's a cheap cash grab knockoff of what the original was. So if you look at Curse of the Blair Witch as the original documentary project to go along with it, then Shadow of the Blair Witch is just a cheap knockoff of Curse of the Blair Witch. And it's they bring in the family member, this guy's Jeff's family members, and they don't want their faces to be seen, so they black their faces out, and they're mad that the movie's being released, and it's it doesn't work. You can't do this now.
Right.
We all know that the original Blair Witch wasn't real. We all know so it feels even cheaper and more insulting that they try to do this, and it's just bad. It's just bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I said before we started that it's got some good ideas that really could have worked with skilled writers or rewriters, and better actors. They tried, they really did, but this is a mental abuse game that's going on here, and they're the only one selling it is Donahue. He's the best in the whole movie. And I think that's what, watching it now after having a don't laugh, critically think about movies for a while, I can see that they're trying, but they got these people cheap. So that's why. And I had no idea that the woman who played Heather in the first one, I always saw this character in this one episode as super familiar, and I never bothered to look her up. I'm just oh, I know her from something. And then something else would happen. The episode Charlie Gets an Abortion, episode 2 of Always Sunny, she plays Charlie's ex-girlfriend that tricks him into thinking it's his kid. I didn't know that. It's good to see her still doing some stuff here and there.
Yeah, she owns she became a big pot grower.
Oh.
Medicinal marijuana and stuff.
Okay.
She became that was her thing. I remember they talked about how she pretty much quit acting and used the money that she made to start this pot growing business, and became incredibly successful at it from what I gather.
Wow.
So but yeah, Book of Shadows is garbage. It's just garbage. And the accompanying mock documentary that comes with it, Shadow of the Blair Witch, I thought was also garbage. But love the first one and love Curse of the Blair Witch. I think they're really well done. So that brings us to the 2016 sequel, Blair Witch.
Yes.
Directed by one of my favorite directors, Adam Wingard, who just his work, he worked on VHS, he did You're Next, he did The Guest.
Yep.
He directed Godzilla and Kong.
Yeah.
The New Empire.
It was nice to see him get bigger and bigger stuff.
Yeah. I love him.
Yeah. Agreed.
I love him. We talked about this movie when it came out in 2016. And it is a direct sequel of the original one. They take away, I'm from what I can gather, any of the other canon that's been built, whether it's Book of Shadows or any of the stuff from the books.
Right, it's just the first movie stuff, right? Bruston Parr and Ellie, and that's it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And we have James, played by James Allen McCune, who is supposed to be Heather Donahue's younger brother.
Yeah.
He was only 4 years old when she disappeared in the woods. He still has nightmares about it. His friend Lisa is a film student who wants to make a documentary about it. And then we have Ashley and Peter, which are their two friends that are going to come along. They're going to go out into the Black Hills Forest. They found this video on YouTube that James is convinced is taken within the Rustin Parr house and sees in a mirror a flash that he swears is his sister.
Yep. It's very House on Haunted Hill inviting them there.
Essentially, yeah. We also have Wes Robinson, who plays Lane, and Valerie Curry, who plays Talia. Lane is the character that is said to have filmed the video and uploaded it, and his girlfriend Talia, they were together when they filmed it. They say that they found this tape, buried under a tree. And they're going to go into the woods and they're going to show them where they found the thing. And Lisa's going to film it for a documentary, and James is hoping to find his sister. And we're off and running, pretty much right off the bat. You got Peter and Ashley, who are the ones that don't really believe in the stuff. James is holding on to the hope that his sister's alive, and Lisa's kind of just there to film it. And there's some romantic tension between her and James, but it's never really brought out. It's just kind of there.
Yeah.
But so they go off into the woods with these two. They meet up with Lane and Talia. They're a little creeped out because they're like, "Oh, we're not gonna tell you where it is. We're gonna have to go. We're gonna come with you and we're gonna show you." And then we kind of get an idea that the two of them are trying to work them a little bit, and it ends up being a thing where they kind of dupe them to getting out there, and they kind of made things up, and exactly kind of what you would expect. But I mean, almost immediately, as soon as they get into the woods and they spend the first night in the woods, weird shit starts to happen.
Yeah, and if I may interject for a second.
You may.
They turned this eerie mood piece about terrified people into basically just a fucking monster movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember we were at Sam Goody and the movie Maniac series by Todd McFarlane came. It was Freddy and Pinhead and all those guys.
Yep.
And the Blair Witch back in 2001 maybe it came out. And we're like, how the fuck do you make a toy out of something you never saw?
Yeah.
And in this one, you actually see it. And by 2016, the design is not scary anymore.
No, and you just get a few quick flashes of it, but you definitely
a lot
do
of
see
monster yelling.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's really. There's a lot of things that are frustrating about this movie, because the story is fine.
Yeah,
the story is good. I get what they're going for.
No, I love the idea of I'm gonna go find my sister. That's a perfect way to get a sequel going. Good.
And these are some minor spoilers for this movie if you haven't seen it, but they start to introduce the time loop thing, and they do a really good job. There's this great scene where basically James and his group they find out that Lane has kind of set them up here, and they're like, you know what, fuck you, get out of here. We don't want to work with you. And he's like, no, you don't understand. He's like, we got to stick together. We can't separate.
Right, but he's lied to him about everything. So
right, and they're like, and they say that they're like, why would we believe anything you have to say? So they send them off on their way, and then they go back and Ashley's injured her foot, so like she's having trouble walking, and she seems sick, and like weird kind of shit is happening, and so they have to sit. They do the thing where they're walking in the same direction, but end up where they started.
Yeah.
Which is a callback to the first film, and it's a callback to the idea of the time loops that have kind of been brought in a little bit, but not fully explored as of yet.
Yeah, I was kind of happy they did this and they made it a more major part, because it is an unexplored idea that until this, you'd seen explored in stuff like Grave Encounters, where you have the time stuff and the looping hallways. Also, while I'm thinking of it, Grave Encounters 2 started the same way Book of Shadows started, with basically movie reviews of the first movie. And I'm like, I see what they did there. Good for them. That's all. I just wanted to point out I noticed that. So I like saying things I noticed, I guess.
So they hear all kinds of noises. They hear monster noises. They hear, cracking of things, trees falling at night.
Yeah, it's like Willow Creek and the Frankenstein Project and Exists all happened at the same time, 4 feet from their heads.
But nobody saw or anything.
No.
So, and then also what they do with this, like, there's a lot of just little things that are left that, like, they could have explored. So, like, they set up a trail cam to overlook the website, and then they never really use it.
Yeah.
They use it as another angle, and this is the other one part that drives me nuts with this. This is found footage. This is fully found footage. But they get them these little, like, ear cams to wear.
Yeah.
That shoot like a fucking $50,000 Arri Alexa, like
yeah. At the end, they had a difficult time, I think, keeping up with the found footage framing. But I thought they did handle one part of it very well. When one character is going through a very small space, and you get the reverse shot, they've thrown the camera ahead, and I'm like, okay. You made the effort to show me you're doing that, so I'm not going to get pissed about where'd you get that camera angle from. Because
there's not a lot of like camera angle stuff that is frustrating in this. It's played pretty well. It's just frustrating that like you show us what equipment they're using, and then the footage that we're getting out of it is like, oh, well, you threw a filter on that to give it the digital tape look. Like, it shouldn't look like that.
Yeah. But your average moviegoer isn't even going to think about that.
Right, yeah, exactly. But overall, like, they do a good job of trying to keep it in that world.
Yeah, I didn't.
And
there were no egregious slips.
Right. There's one great scene, though, where they're looking for Peter. Peter's now been lost in the woods. And then Lane and Talia show back up at the camp. And they're, like, covered in dirt. And, like, they walk up and Lane says to them, "When's the last time you saw us?"
Right.
And she's like, "We saw it when we split off from you this afternoon." And he looks at Talia and he's like, "See, we've been out here for 4 days. They're already dead."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well, they've got food and I'm hungry."
Right.
So.
She stays. I don't blame her.
But it's a really good point to just kind of slam in there and be like, okay, yeah, there's a time thing going on here too.
Yeah.
And it's so much more than just like spooky witch in the woods. But then unfortunately, it all ends with spooky witch in the woods.
Right, but how does the time loop play into the whole thing? Because if there's a time loop, fine, that explains the tree in Book of Shadows, I guess. But, like, what does it have to do with the witch?
That's a great question. And the time loop thing becomes a massive part of the story in the Blair Witch video game.
Oh, okay.
To a point where, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, no matter how many times, like, I played through the Blair Witch game, I think once or twice. There's a few different endings you get, but it's essentially one of those things where, like, the time loop causes you to actually, spoiler alert, if you've never played the Blair Witch video game, like, you become the killer type thing.
Okay. Time crimes.
Yeah, and you actually, like, yeah, exactly, time crimes. Like, and you're actually fighting with yourself the whole time and you don't realize it because it's this whole time loop thing.
Nice.
But it's an interesting thing that they throw in, but the problem is that they just kind of throw it in.
Oh. Yeah.
And it's same thing with this film. It's like part of it, and they're like, when's the last time you saw the daylight when the alarm goes off at 7 a.m. and it's dark out? And like, there's like, okay, I'm like, there's way more interesting things going on here.
Yeah.
But they just don't really explore a lot of it. And, once you get to the house and then it's like, well, the evil witch is there and the monster witch is there or whatever. And like, then there's like UFO lights coming from outside that are never explained.
Yeah.
And
that piqued my interest, but like it did make me question: is it actually a witch?
Right.
Could there be a sci-fi angle to it where there's a fucking warp field generated by something, and you go through the door to Rustin Parr's house and you go back, and I don't know. Well, they're not going to make another one, are they? Please say.
I mean, I'm sure there'll be another one at some point.
Yeah, but I don't think it'll continue the story. Do you?
Who knows? The idea that they did, I mean, and the thing with this movie, I mean, obviously you couldn't in 2016, you know, after 17 years since the original, you couldn't like create another legend thing, but like they did a really good job. Like they filmed this in secret, which I thought was pretty cool.
That was fantastic. Yeah.
And like they just were like, at Comic-Con, they were like, oh, just so you know, we're gonna show you the trailer for this new movie, and then it was a Blair Witch movie.
Yeah,
It was all done, and they're like, it comes out like next week or whatever.
Yeah, we knew he was making something, but it was called The Woods.
Yep.
And then that, and I really like what the streaming services do, along with like what he did at Comic-Con, where you announce it and you only got it. Like there's a trailer for the next season of Futurama, however you say it, and it's out in 3 weeks. It's going to premiere in 3 weeks, so like you don't have to wait 9 months for it. And I love that. I love it because now it's foremost in my head, and I'm not gonna. And that's what he did with this. That's really smart. Because then the hype, everybody's talking about it. Oh my God, they made a movie in secret, which is just amazing in this day and age. But then you want to go see, well, what did they manage to do? And that's perfect.
The problem is the movie's not very good.
Yeah, there's that.
It's like the first half of it, like I'm on board, like they're, you know, but once we get into the dark, and then they're switching cameras back and forth and this and that. And then there's a couple spots where you're like, well, wait, what is this camera angle coming from? Like, I know we said for the most part, they do a pretty good job of that. But like, there's this scene where like Lisa, who's got the injured foot and can barely walk.
Oh, yeah.
She finds the drone trapped in the tree.
Oh, shit. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's it. That's the one scene.
And she's now got the controller for the drone, which she never had the controller at any point. Like, the other girl was the one that was flying the drone the whole time, and she's roaming around the woods after they've been chased away from the campsite by the monster. Like, she's got the controller for the drone.
Yeah, they got quickly disinterested in their survival.
Yes. She decides she's going to climb the tree to get the drone down, and I'm like, why?
Didn't they say so they could find a way out, but they couldn't find a way out before because it's just forest. That's where they are. They're in an alternate dimension that's just forest.
Right. So she climbs up this tree and then eventually falls down, and then the monster gets her or whatever.
Yeah.
And the way this film closes up is just like, I'm sorry, I don't need to see the witch at this point. I don't want to see the witch.
No, the witch is better as an idea.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the third movie, 2 shorts, a game. Like, you got all this stuff.
Bunch of comics, ton of books.
Yeah.
Because there's been like, so there was there was the video game. The video game, there is a bunch of books, adult, like young novel type, adult books that were written. There's a whole run of the comic book. I love the comic book. The original comic books came out right as the first film came out, and I had that whole first run, and those are excellent because they explore like the Burkittsville 5 and like the Rustin Parr stuff, and like they explore that, which is really cool. There was a Hunt a Killer. I think they did 2 seasons of Blair Witch stories on Hunt a Killer, which are now actually like $150 to try to buy them because they're out of print. But there's this whole world that they build off of this, this small found footage analog horror film, which is which I think is very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I just wish that the movies were stronger. The stories are fine.
Yeah, the stories are the best part of it. So if I was going to grade the original 3 films, just looking just at the films, but taking into account whatever else comes along with them, the first is the best, and I would give the first like an A or an A- just because of what it means to the horror genre and the brilliance in the marketing, the brilliance in the faux documentary that came along with it. Its whole package is like an A or an A-. The film itself is probably closer to like a B+ or so.
That's fair.
I still think it's done very well for what it is, and it definitely very much set the bar for what the entire genre would come afterwards. We wouldn't have Paranormal Activity. We wouldn't have any of those films if it wasn't for this.
Yeah, we wouldn't have the last 4 shows we did.
No, yeah, we wouldn't. And any number of reviews we've done over the years. We've done a lot of found footage horror films. So that kind of sets the bar. I think the 2016 direct follow-up would be the second best of them. But as a film, and there's really nothing, there's no lore to go along with it. It lives off the lore of the first one. But it's a much, much better film than Book of Shadows. So I would give that probably like a C-.
Okay.
Really frustrating ending. But overall, a good attempt.
Yeah.
If it was.
Yeah.
We have somebody watching live.
Oh, nice.
Dan saying that the Curse of the Blair Witch was awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
I did find this. Eduardo Sanchez, director of the Blair Witch Project, said about the Blair Witch franchise in 2009. Trust me, we'll get there. Ideally, each Blair Witch film would be a completely different kind of movie. We thought about doing a film that takes place in the late 1700s and looks like a Kubrick movie with gritty-looking people and lighting. In April 2022, Lionsgate entered early development on the next installment, with intentions being the project will relaunch the franchise, and the studio is reportedly considering developing the project to a streaming exclusive film. By May 23, Oliver Park signed on to the project as director, with Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez serving as producers. The project was said to be a joint venture production between Lionsgate and Haxan Films. Principal photography was tentatively scheduled to commence later that summer or fall at CinemaCon, held in April 2024, so only a few months ago. The film was officially announced to be in development. Roy Lee will return to the franchise in his role as producer alongside Jason Blum. The project will be a joint venture production between Lionsgate and Blumhouse Productions. So there is another one coming.
We'll see, man. We'll see. I mean,
I'll
I'm
give it
open
a
to
shot.
it for sure. I'm
Yeah.
open to it for sure. So Blair Witch 2016, I would say C-. Book of Shadows is a D- at best. Because not only is the film garbage, where they tried to take the legend and then also tried to like dupe you into thinking like, oh, this was a real set of murders that we based this movie off of, because the reason why you guys liked the original one was because we gave you such a good legend to go along with it. So here's the legend of this one. And then the documentary Shadow of the Blair Witch that went along with it was just bad. Like,
I gotta check. I gotta find that and check it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's worth checking out and watching. But there's this like they bring in news footage, and then they're like have the lady that's like at the courthouse doing the news footage, and they show her doing the introduction. Oh, this is so and so from Action News 5 or whatever. Blah blah. I'm here with such and such. And then after that, rather than show you the news broadcast, somebody else is filming them with like a movie camera.
Okay.
And it's just like, again, like if you're gonna give me a documentary, give me a documentary.
Yeah.
Don't give me like shit of like we filmed this really well and like just happen to have a person there with a really expensive camera.
Oh, jeez.
So, what about you? What order would you put them in? What would you grade them?
I agree with you about the first one. As a film on its own, it ranks lower than what it's contributed to the movies in general, because we don't just have found footage horror movies. There's others, but
like Project X and like Chronicle and like
it's a huge thing, and like it's rare, I think, that you can watch a whole new genre come around. Like our parents would have seen it with the Beatles changing rock and roll. And I'm not thinking about negative stuff at this point. Color TV, just one idea, one thing. Mary Shelley created science fiction, So it is important. It's very low on the list of most important inventions for mankind, but it's there because entertainment is supremely important as in life. But yeah, so I would give it a B. But I think as far as marketing and the impact it had, this is a case study in successful marketing.
It's really almost unmatched.
It is. I'm gonna give that part of it, the whole thing, the impact. It's an A+. It's 100% impact. Everybody knew about it, and you can even see how it changed how films felt, because after that you got stuff like Saw that was all gritty and fluorescent lights, and people were experimenting a little more, and it was a little better, and it was good. And we got all these movies I like now. I don't like the third one because it goes in, it turns into a monster movie, and those people are just dicks to each other.
Yeah, yeah.
And like when I watch Grave Encounters 2, I skip the whole college part and I start it when they're on the road because I don't want to hear all that sexist bullshit anymore. It's like I want to like these characters.
Right.
And they're not likable. Like no. So I like the characters in Book of Shadows more. I think they're more visually interesting as characters.
Yep.
They have a better range of archetypes in the whole thing. And you got Crazy Eyes on what's his face, the lead actor. And I did actually enjoy is this reality? Is this the reality they're seeing? Late night with the devil kind of thing. I enjoyed that because it actually kept me thinking about, okay, well, on tape it would look like this, and then that's that there, and this is what they're seeing. So that had a little more to it than just, I'm going to go find my sister, oh, scary monster.
Right, right.
But still, both of them get like a C-.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will say the one redhead girl that was in part 2 really could have played a great Poison Ivy.
Okay.
Yeah. She's just red curly hair and looks good. That's all.
Cool. I also recommend the video game, which is, I think it was Xbox and PC. I don't remember the PlayStation version. But that's if you like stuff like Silent Hill and like horror games like that, it's definitely much more muted.
Okay.
But it plays well, and don't try to figure out like the story because the story's fucking confusing as fuck. But, like it's a good creepy play. The original run of comics I really enjoyed. I've never read any of the books though.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
So all right then. So that's our talk, our Blair Witch talk. We have Scott here to break down another OTCSI. Let's see what he's got.
All right.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. We're the first ones on the scene. I'm Special Investigator Reverend Scott, and welcome to the classic Holy Shit edition of OTCSI.
It's time for OTCSI.
OTCSI.
That's what happens when worlds collide.
OTCSI.
I'm going to get to the truth.
That's enough of that.
This week, we have a comedy of errors on display resulting in the death of a segment. Back from the end of September in the year of our Lord 2020, at the height of the pandemic, comes the investigation of Holy Shit 659. Let's begin.
All right. Well, let's make an announcement and make things more nice and fun for people, I suppose. So, what's today's date? September 18th, 19th?
Today is Monday,
the 21st.
September 21st.
21st. So that means October is only 9 days away? September 30? Yeah, 9 days. So you know what that means?
No.
Oh, it can only mean one thing, Christopher. That's the wrong thing to turn down. It can only mean one thing.
A new Holy Shit with Reverend Scott. I got news for you, buddy. This also meant another Halloween Throwdown was coming. An event treasured by everyone and attended by no one, and is now long since dead. I can smell the rotten corpse still to this day. What a goddamn tragedy. Let's keep looking.
What? Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. With Reverend Scott.
Whoa. Goo, 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 ah!
I don't remember that.
Hey there, Bill and Chris. This is Reverend Scott. You may also call me Scotty Too Hottie.
That's fine. Names are meaningless.
So, are you prepared for this week's episode of Holy Shit?
We're fucking prepared.
Well, you can say that all you want, but I don't really think you are.
Not a big deal. I don't care. Whatever. Don't matter.
Good, because I'm not prepared either. Like, I literally have nothing prepared for this week. Right off the bat, you can hear Chris's distant voice and tell this was during the pandemic, but before Riverside. Thank God for Riverside FM. But this was also before Reverend Scott did the reviews of your reviews on the segment. I wonder what nonsense will get driven into the ground this time. I'm about as prepared for this segment as Bill was last week to play the trailer to Witchtrap.
All right. The real question is, did we like Witchtrap? Here is a trailer from 1989's Witchtrap.
From the writer and director of the classic horror film and box office smash, Witchboard.
Is this not stereo?
The police found his body
not,
on his
is it?
very altar. His chest carved open.
All right, let's see. Hang on, pause. I'm like, is that just like coming in one ear purposely, or is it one?
I have to say, I need a citation to prove to me modern classic Witchboard.
Well, we could talk about it. Let's try this trailer. Here we go.
Del escritor y director de clásicos de terror, James Tenace.
All right.
Avery Lauder era más que un medio. Era
Fine,
un
sure.
poderosísimo Lucifer.
Oh my God, that's a better voice actor.
Sí.
Hola.
La policía
Me
encontró su
llamo
cuerpo en este
Witchtrap.
mismo altar.
¿Dónde está el
Había
fantomas?
velas encendidas por todas partes. Dormía su
Come
asesino.
on. Okay, I can't win today, man. Witchtrap trailer. Let's try this one. This is gonna be another one of those witch traps that's labeled as trailer. It's really just a.
It's the whole movie.
It's just a scene. I think it is. I think it's just like the first 2 minutes in the movie.
Oh, are they doing the shot of the mansion?
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
The portrait.
Cool, man. Yeah. It's come on. What is wrong with you people? Just label your shit like a normal human. How about the German? Let's just try the German one.
Mysteriöse Vorfälle ereignen sich in einem Haus, das seit 10 Jahren unbewohnt ist.
Avery Lauder war mehr als nur ein Medium. Er war ein
That
sehr
sounds
mächtiger
way better.
Zauberer.
Meinen Sie einen Hexer?
Ja. Die Polizei fand seine Leiche auf dem
These are all the same trailer too, which is amazing.
Und überall brannten
Look
Kerzen.
at the gams on that
Jane,
chick.
ich habe ein schlechtes Gefühl in dieser Sache.
Machen Sie sich keine Sorgen, es wird schon gut gehen.
Eine
It's so good.
Wow, that was a long clip. Nearly 2 minutes of just trying to find a trailer to play, and that's after I edited down heavily. This sorry son of a bitch should have edited down even more. And I hope you're taking notes over there, rookie, because even nearly 4 years ago, Bill has already seen screwing up trailers on the show. Not to mention that no one will be able to even tell what was wrong with that first trailer now because you released the shows in mono instead of stereo. The mountain of evidence is ever growing. That was like half of last week's show. The other half was talking about the Robin Williams classic, The Final Cut. And when I say classic, I kind of mean classic, which I had actually seen before, but many years ago, before I even met my wife.
What was her name?
Whitney. Her name was Whitney.
You forgot her name, Bill? How embarrassing. But back to the movie, I agree it deserves some sort of A from both of you. At least I think that's what you gave it for a grade, and if not, you were wrong. But it's not often you get a really good premise like that that's actually explored and given a satisfactory conclusion. Most of the time you get something like, I don't know, The Purge, which is a great premise, but it just wasn't given what it deserved. Although The Purge 2 Anarchy, starring Frank Grillo, was kind of great.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know.
Just a quick note for my investigation. The Purge Anarchy is 10 years old this year. What the fuck? And yes, it still holds up. And yes, it's still probably the best entry in the series still. Keep an eye out for Frank Grillo in the upcoming James Gunn Superman, looking like he hasn't aged a day. We may need to investigate that next. but I'm kind of getting off topic. The Final Cut is a high recommend for me as well, which is worth even higher of a recommend than any recommend you two would ever give. And that's just how it is. I don't make the rules. I'm just doing my job here. Isn't that right, Chris?
He doesn't flaunt anything. He's just very humble and does his job, and he's the best. And I like that.
Boy, I like it too. Almost as much as I like to plan ahead for my segments, which is what I should have done this week.
But nope, he decides to just kick himself in the nuts.
So I guess I'll just move on to what's coming up next week. Make sure you all tune in to the next Outside the Cinema when Bill teaches Chris about movies he's never heard of.
I think a lot of it has to do with the cinematography in it, which was by Tak Fujimoto.
Yeah.
Who did he did like Death. Back in the day, he did like a bunch of exploitation stuff, but he did like Death Race 2000, Dr. Black, Mr. Hyde. He also worked on a little film you might have heard of called Star Wars.
Maybe. I gotta look it up.
Speaking of rookies, only the biggest rookies of rookies has never heard of Star Wars. What an utter embarrassment. I'm about to throw you off this case. Bill showers me with compliments.
You're a loser, man.
Yeah, yeah.
You suck.
Chris shows Bill some of his hand-drawn anime porn.
So let me show you this. See this?
What?
And this.
What?
And this.
Oh, wow.
And finally, Bill can't handle the bass drop in my latest mixtape.
What is happening? Oh, Jesus. Oh, you give a man a heart attack in here.
I hope you two newbies recognize that beat from episode 156, the 3-year anniversary song from yours truly. And if you don't, I'm demoting you both to crossing guard duty. But I think that's all we can get out of this crime scene this week. I'm going to let the rest of this play out until the next OTCSI. All that and so many more bass drops that'll give you a heart attack. But until then, peace and love, guys. Outside the Cinema.
It's gross, and you are a less appealing people for loving it so much.
It's fair. All right, you guys know the deal.
Yep.
Join the Patreon, patreon.com/outsidethecinema. Join our Facebook group. Go to our Facebook page. Follow Chris and I at OTC Bill and at Cthulhu. Next week we'll be back with kind of a show. We're gonna just kind of sum up some stuff that we've watched from this year, stuff we're looking forward to, and then 2 weeks we should be back live, hopefully. So if any of that changes, just keep an eye on the group. We'll let you know. But thanks for hanging out, and hope you enjoyed the Blair Witch conversation.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Everyone have a good week. Talk to you soon.